In his book, Poison by Prescription, journalist John Lawrenson explains how AZT tests conducted by the FDA and Burroughs Wellcome, the manufacturer, were scientifically sloppy and outright fraudulent. During the experiments, patients taking AZT became anemic, suffered low white blood cell counts accompanied by vomiting. Over half had to have blood transfusions. 20% were transfused several times. Though both doctors and patients were not supposed to know who was getting AZT and who was getting the placebo, it became obvious halfway through the test who was on AZT. Out of fear and desperation, many of those being tested did drugs. The test was terminated early, and because of what appeared to be benefits from using AZT, the patients who were taking the placebo were now also given AZT. This made long-term follow-up of AZT's toxic effects impossible. Despite a warning by FDA toxicology analyst Harvey Chernoff that AZT not be approved, the FDA was pressured by AIDS activist organizations to lift the ban, and hundreds of thousands of people began taking AZT, even though AZT cannot cure AIDS and is only supposed to slow down the progression. But the logic behind AZT treatment is flawed, even if one believes HIV causes AIDS. Because HIV only infects about 1 T cell in 1,000, 999 healthy T cells must die to kill the one cell that is infected. And this can only happen early on, before HIV becomes dormant and is still making DNA. Yet AIDS patients are given AZT for months, on into years, randomly destroying DNA in all parts of the body. AZT is expensive and costs between $8,000 and $12,000 a year, most of which is paid for directly or indirectly by the taxpayer. Burroughs Wellcome, now Glaxo Wellcome, the manufacturer, has generated sales over $1 billion a year with AZT. Because of rules allowed by the FDA, a bottle of AZT that costs about $5 to make can be sold for over $500 as a prescription, and much of this markup is being subsidized by the taxpayer. There's no question that destroying DNA is lucrative, but what good, if any, does AZT really do? Patients who begin taking AZT show an immediate increase in T cells, and because it is assumed that HIV is killing those cells, AZT is assumed to be slowing down the virus that causes AIDS. Dr. Charles Thomas explains why this short-term effect is dangerously misleading.
All toxic substances elicit a response, a positive response, for a while. For example, you can give people low levels of strain, and they suddenly become a little bit healthier, a little bit stronger. Before higher doses would kill them. Radiation, for example, causes a lengthening. Low doses of radiation causes a lengthening of the lifespan of rodents. Low doses of ethylene chloride, will also elongate the lifetime of rodents. Higher doses, of course, will kill them.
So when you start on AZT, you're killing off your bone marrow, and the blood system notices a defect in red cells and other blood cells and sends out a signal, overproduce as long as you can. And for a while then, people start producing more than they did prior to the treatment. But as you kill off the sources from where it comes, you very soon bring it down to below where they started from, and ultimately pretty soon to death. So within a year or two, most people on AZT are gone. They're killed off from the AZT. Some last longer and some last shorter, depending on how sensitive they are to the drug.
Peter Duesberg cites Kimberly Bergalis, the young woman supposedly infected by her dentist with HIV, as actually an AZT victim. Before she was treated with AZT, her only problem was a yeast infection common to many women.
She became sick when she was treated with AZT. And she got all the symptoms that you would predict from AZT. She lost weight, and she became anemic, lost her hair, and couldn't walk, and died on a wheelchair a year later after treatment with AZT.
I did nothing wrong, yet I'm being made to suffer like this. My life has been taken away.
Is this AIDS, or is it AZT poisoning? Approximately 200,000 people are currently being treated with drugs like AZT worldwide, many who are not sick and have no AIDS symptoms at all. Studies have shown that physicians are less likely to question authority than other professionals. As long as the American Medical Association and the U.S. Department of Health back HIV, they'll follow suit. The shocking fact is, if HIV does not cause AIDS and AZT is actually killing their patients, the average doctor will be the last to know.
I think that it's enormous cruelty in feeding people AZT. Certainly, it's not a good way to kill HIV. And besides, why do you want to kill HIV when it hasn't been shown to cause AIDS?
Recent studies on AZT's long-term effects are confirming Lawrenson's suspicions. The International AIDS Conference in Berlin announced that AZT was ineffective in preventing AIDS among non-symptomatic HIV positives. In spite of all of this, AIDS industry drug promoters like Margaret Fissel continue to encourage early treatment of what they call HIV disease with highly toxic drugs like AZT. And as if the lives of homosexuals, IV drug users, and those with medical risks are not enough, Fissel and the others are now calling for pregnant women and innocent babies to be sacrificed on the altar to HIV. Tremendous pressure is placed on pregnant women to be tested for the virus and treated with AZT if they're found to be antibody positive. Many are calling this retroactive abortion, and this time they're killing the mother too.
Here in pregnancy, one of the hardest rules was not for mothers to take anything that is mutagenic during pregnancy, not even an American beer, which contains a few % of alcohol. Ever since the thalidomide crisis in the 50s, where we had all birth defects as a result of that drug that is a tranquilizer, a German tranquilizer it was in Europe, that produced all these thalidomide babies, we have ever accepted any mutagenic substance in pregnant women again. And now we're allowing even AZT in pregnant women, and I think it's a nightmare. I'm at a loss for words for this. Yeah. I can't believe that this is happening in this country that prides itself of being so advanced and so progressive and so knowledgeable about biology. Putting AZT on a daily basis in a pregnant mother and a baby is beyond me. Yeah.
Babies born to HIV-infected mothers will initially test HIV positive, but within a year, 50 to 90% develop their own immune systems and become HIV negative. Even if one believes that HIV causes AIDS, there is no rational reason to expose all pregnant mothers and infants to AZT to only slightly reduce the chance of HIV infection, ultimately found in only 2 out of 10 babies. Is AZT more damaging to a growing baby than a full-grown adult?
Well, I would say yes. I think once you're fully developed, you are less susceptible to damage from a terminator of DNA synthesis because everything is grown, it's there already. But in a developing baby or fetus, where everything is going, you're damaging randomly the brain and the bones and the lungs and the kidneys. Everything is at risk for termination of DNA synthesis. It's I don't understand it, that this can happen in this country.
Mothers who refuse to take AZT and resist giving it to their baby could find their physician reporting them to social services, who could take the child away and force treatment. This is actually happening in some cases. Cheryl and Steve Nagel know this firsthand. Lindsay, their adopted daughter from Romania, had to be tested for HIV upon entering the U.S. She tested positive and was put on AZT. The Nagels became concerned after Lindsay would continually wake up at night screaming about pain burning in her legs. After contacting Peter Duesberg, they took his advice and got her off AZT, and the problems went away. But their physician has contested this decision and tried various ways to coerce them into continuing the AZT treatment.
Lindsay is now doing just fine, but meanwhile other children from her group who continued on AZT have long since died.
Lawsuits against Glaxo Wellcome and treating physicians are beginning to abound, especially in cases where the HIV test produces a false positive. The federal government cannot be sued and is immune to responsibility for creating a mass misdiagnosis based on HIV. But how about the pharmaceutical giants that claim their drug prolongs life?
They are responsible for very, very misleading, crooked, fraudulent tests. And I think they deserve everything that's coming to them. I think they have a great deal of culpability. And I think they should shoulder that culpability and make it right.